My name is Michael Lane. I'm the president of Liftwork Group, and thanks for joining us this evening. Um, we're going to do something a little bit different today. Um, Candidly, we are supposed to have a guest, and our guest is not here. So I'm gonna wing it a little bit. Um, and share some of my thoughts on some recent news. Um, I'm going to pull up um, the Space Capital document that we were looking at the other day, and kind of go through some stuff a little bit more. So today's, I hate to say it, but today is not an especially organized day because uh, I planned for a guest that isn't here. So we're gonna wing it a little bit. First, a couple things. I know most of you have heard an awful lot about Starship this week, and I'm not going to really go into a lot of detail there. I think that news has been well covered, well reported. So, things I'd like to point out though are let me pull it up here. Oh, wait a second. Okay, well, this is confusing. I am literally getting a message right now that our guest is here, but they're not here. Just a moment. Well, and this is what happens when you do a live show. Um, not sure, not sure what's going on, but here's what happens when you do a live show. Good. Well, this tells me that our guest is on its way, so that's going to be cool. In the meantime, let's kind of focus on space because I think that's some pretty important developments. Terrific. Hey, great. Glad to see you. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to finish my thoughts and then I'll bring you on. So iSpace went off yesterday, and we talked about it on Monday on our show. It's a pretty remarkable company. It's a pretty remarkable system. I definitely encourage you to go to their website to go watch the entry, descent, and landing attempt. Let's put that in perspective because I don't really think that the news has been covering the background very well. This is not the first commercial effort to go to the moon. In fact, it's depending on how you look at it, it's either the second or the third. India and Israel both attempted it. Curiously, both this program, iSpace, and Israel's program, they are offshoots of the original Google Lunar X Prize program. And that started back in 2000, gosh, I think it was 2008. Yeah, I think it was 2008. The Google Lunar X Prize started in 2008. It was supposed to have a 10-year lifespan to go to 2018. They did have some extensions, but both the Israeli program and the Japanese program started in that original competition. And hats off to them because they raised hundreds of millions of dollars and continued on that path, even though the X Prize program ended without any competitors being funded or winning the prizes. So iSpace has history. They've been taking a little bit of heat in the press because they went public just a few weeks ago, 6 weeks ago or something like that. They raised a bunch of money. And I would say that was relatively savvy of them, right? There's long been this idea that if you're a pharmaceutical company and you've got a drug that's going to market, you wanna sell while there's hype and not when the production of those drugs are going out into the market. And I would say the space sector is somewhat similar to that. That's why you saw all those SPACs last year and the year before, special purpose acquisition companies. I don't know whether iSpace should have been public or not. I'm not going to try to back forecast what has happened. I'm just going to say that they are looking to the future, and they did a heck of a job. That engineering was remarkably difficult. And if you're counting, and I am counting, they got closer than anybody did, right? So in Israel and India both created $100 million craters. Japan created a $100 million crater. But at the end of the day, we didn't have a loss of signal until about 70 meters above the surface of the moon. And Israel and India didn't get that close. So hats off to them. And I think what I'm hearing is it wasn't about a loss of signal, it was a loss of fuel, which I was a little surprised at that one. But that's the current indication. So we'll see what happens next, but hats off to those folks. My team was watching it live. We were all excited about it. In this industry, the phrase "space is hard" is all over the internet, and everybody in this industry, folks like me that have been at it for 20 years, we know this stuff is really tricky. So hats off to those folks. Want to praise them. Their effort was valiant. I have confidence that they're going to grow and go back to the moon. They already have plans for it. So, all right, good for them. Okay, and with that, I'm going to bring on Jeromy Grimmett. So, hey, hi. Sorry about the confusion. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm really glad to see you here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Michael.
Yeah. So the folks that watch our show, they kind of know this format. We didn't get a chance to chat, but rather than me reading off a boring scripted bio, we spent about 5 or 10 minutes just getting to know you, right? Who are you? How did you get here? What was your path to this moment? That's always really important. We call it our origin story, because we want people to know there's lots of different paths into this community. It's a brand new community. It's growing every day. You're wearing a Harvard shirt, so I'm going to make a guess that you had something to do with that institution. What's your story? How'd you get here?
Well, wow. That's a kind of a loaded question. It started off where I wrote a research paper in school. With that, I had gotten some encouragement from some of the professors there that really felt like I had some pretty good thoughts and pretty good ideas of how to work through and work in this business. And frankly, I've always wanted to be in space. I've always wanted to have something to do with the aerospace industry. I had always dreamed actually of working for Skunk Works at Lockheed. That was, ever since I was probably 6 or 7 years old, playing with, a model and one of those Estes models that I picked up at, I want to say, Kmart or Howard Johnson's or maybe Walmart back in the day. Yeah, I mean, putting together the SR-71, and they have a book in those models, and they still have them today. And they tell you about the spacecraft or the aircraft that you're building. It gives a summary and a history about it. And when I read that they built this amazing piece of technology that was easily, 20, 50 years ahead of its time in a circus tent in the middle of the desert, I was like, this is the place I got to go. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. But, life's twists and turns happen. And I didn't go into aerospace. I actually went into guidance and missile defense systems with the Army. And after that, I went into IT. And that's where I spent a good portion of, 20 some years of my life. And one day I was going to school and I wrote a research paper, and I had a few thoughts that the professors thought were pretty good, and they encouraged me to build out this a little bit more. And I said, okay, we'll check it out. I went to the MIT Space Conference. I understood things a little bit better, and before I knew it, there I was. I was starting a space company the same day. So that was March 15th, 2019. And I walked out of the door of MIT. I got in the car. I called my partner and said, hey, we're selling the IT company and I'm going to space. I'm starting a space company. And that's no joke. That's dead truth. It happened just like that, and we sold the company, and luck and networking and just sheer force of will,
Right.
Here we are.
Right. Gotta love sheer force of will. That gets you a long ways. So you were both at MIT and at Harvard.
I was studying at Harvard School of Extension Studies. It's kind of like the back door into Harvard, and I was on track to go into Harvard College. I was in a program that gives us that allows you to earn your master's and your undergraduate at the same time. So I was actually studying international relations and government, and it was pretty awesome. I learned a lot. It was an amazing program, but with the amount of traction that we started to get, it was just really incredible. And so I couldn't do both. Well, technically I was transitioning full-time out of the IT company, working full-time in a space company, and trying to go to school. So technically I am actually a Harvard dropout. So, but I don't encourage that behavior that might be listening. So
I am a dropout of the next door neighbor school at Boston University. So
okay, yeah, we got a couple people that we hired from BU. We love those guys. They're incredible engineers, and I got to tell you, they're some of the people I actually get out of bed and look forward to working with every single day. They're just, the entire team at Rogue is just an incredible group of people, just a relentless, incredible group of people that are just genuinely excited about space.
we'll get to that in a minute. Just let's stick with the kind of that aha moment at the MIT conference. Talk about that space conference a little bit. Who was there? What were the epiphanies? What did you changed the course of your life from an afternoon. So let's talk about that afternoon for a minute.
Well, the day actually started a week or two before that. She hates it when I talk about it, but I talked to my wife about this, about going to this conference. And I told her this is something I really felt like I wanted to do. And she's like, okay, just go, look into it and, go from there. And the night before the conference, I was really sick, like really, really sick, crawling on the floor to get to my bed, literally that sick.
Oh, no.
And my wife took me to the doctor, and I got there. They gave me, I don't know what all medicine they gave me, but I woke up at 3:00 in the morning, felt like $1 million, and I was out the door. She was not a very happy camper with me, but I was like, if I don't go to this conference, I feel like this is what I'm meant to do. I just got to go, and so I went. I was able to talk to industry leaders. I was able to get direct touch and contact with some of the thinkers, Van Espovoda from Starburst. Okay, I got to meet with I want to say Chris Moran from Lockheed Martin Ventures. I got to talk to people out of the AFWorks program. I got to talk to other engineers in the field. And what was really incredible about that is how embracing the community was. That is really what just kind of blew me away at how open and welcoming and encouraging everyone really was. And Van Espovoda was actually he's actually the source and reason why I'm actually here.
Wait just a second. That was 2019, right?
Yep.
Okay. Starburst was only about a year old at that point.
That's right.
Right, it was brand new. Yeah, okay.
That's right. And so a VC and Van.
Sorry, Jamie, just give me 1 second. Let me get some background. So Starburst is one of the largest VCs in the whole network, right? Probably the oldest would be Space Capital. And you've got Starbridge, all similarly named, Space Fund, Hemispheres. There's about 5 or 6 like prominent space investment companies.
Yes.
Starburst was not the first, but I believe they've become the biggest. And what I mean is exclusively focused on the sector of space. There are tons of Silicon Valley VCs that are way bigger, billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar portfolios under management, but they have a space arm. The difference is that Starburst is exclusively a space-focused investment house. So that's really cool. You got that kind of technical credibility and technical validation really early on. That's super important.
Yeah. So what happened was, I mean, this is the first time I've ever been exposed to this industry at any significant level. And so I talked to Van quite a bit, and he said, listen, he says, look up this company. I can't even remember the name of the company. He says, this is what you do. You go out there, you build yourself a team, okay? And you build cool robots to do things in space. Okay. If you can do those 2 things, you will get funding. And I said, okay. I left, and that's what I do. That's what I did, because I am really good at building teams. That is something that's kind of my superpower. Okay. Is I'm very good at building teams. I'm very good at creating a vision and laying out where we need to go, how we need to get there. But I'm not the details guy. So I had to bring in the details guys, right? And I had to bring in the technologists. And I came from the service industry, very highly complex services on the IT side, massive global network types of communication systems and storage systems. That's the world I came from. So making the leap into space and using my knowledge for service delivery, it wasn't too far of a stretch. So as opposed to going out and figuring out a technology, to build a business around, what we did is we went in the other direction. We went and found out what the problems were, what the issue was, what the market needs were, and then we started figuring out what would the technology gaps are that we needed to create in order to solve those problems. So we went the completely opposite direction because we didn't come from space. We didn't come from academia. We came from running businesses and building a business and service industry. So it gave us an opportunity to have a very unique perspective on how to build a company for the space industry in a completely, kind of abnormal way as compared to what you would normally see in the space industry.
Right. We have so many times, myself included, this industry of if you have a hammer, all you want is a nail, right? Like people come in with the thing that they want to do, and then they try to figure out how to shoehorn it into a solution.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's right. And I think that is one of the reasons why Rogue has been successful, is because we went and looked at the market itself, as opposed to trying to shoehorn something or put a square peg into a round hole. We took a very different approach. So in that way, we're very blessed. We're very lucky. And along the way, we picked up some tremendous allies and picked up some great contacts, and we built out our network. So now it's almost easy. I pretty much can get in touch or talk to pretty much anybody I would need to in the space industry. And if I need expertise, it's typically a phone call away. So it's a different world I live in today.
This network has been amazing. The network of space, the people that are there, they're always ready to help, because when I started this program, I said space is hard, and it really is. So it's great to have friends, allies, in my case, drinking buddies and going to weddings. Right. I've been at it for a long time. So it's just fun. And when there's a newcomer to the field, people will go out of their way to open doors. I can't share this because it's not my news to share, but I learned something yesterday that was really, really exciting. There will be a press release about it when I think it's ready. But the first thing I did is, I can help here, and I can introduce them to that. So that's just how the industry it works, and I'm really glad that you kind of saw it kind of right from the very beginning. I'm going to ask one more question about that conference. Who was the host, and what were the topics?
Well, that's what's really incredible, and it was almost I kind of saw it as providence, to be quite frank. It was with the MIT space group that they have there. Can't remember the exact thing, the exact name, but it was during the 50-year celebration of Apollo. Okay. And it was for this particular day, they called it astropreneurship. So,
yep, that's a ISU.
That was it.
ISU phrase.
That was the name of the program, and I was like, I gotta go to this. I just have to. I mean, I had to go, and thank God I did.
Are you familiar with International Space University?
Yes, very familiar. One day I'll be able to take a course or two.
That's a phrase from ISU. In fact, I think the guy's name is Gary Coleman, who coined that phrase. And MIT and ISU have a long history. There's a couple professors there.
Right.
Professor Hoffman co-teaches at ISU in the summertime. So, entrepreneurship. I've loved that phrase. I've loved it right from the very beginning. I'm gonna post a link. I just typed entrepreneurship and MIT, and I'm gonna post that to the channel here. I'm actually, wow, I had a typo in my, let me not have that. Oh, nice.
It does feel like you're stepping in a lot of entrepreneurship, but, hey, there's a lot that you have to go through to be one.
This is what you get when you have a live program, right? It's a little on the rough side, Jeremy. We're gonna take it. We're gonna edit out stuff, and we'll take out all the ums. We have about 5 to 8 minutes of in our program every time, all the time. So we'll take out all that nonsense. So hopefully that will be a little bit stronger. But I like the capture method, right? It's kind of cool. You got to make mistakes like this, but we've been doing this for about 5 months, twice a week, talking to all sorts of people, and it's been really terrific. But it's a live program, so sometimes there's stumbles. So, Astropreneurship program. It's not a program, but conference. I'm aware of it. Really interesting stuff. One of the people on our team, I think that's how you met. Did you meet Rachel at MIT just 6 weeks ago or so?
So the MIT conference obviously has a really special place for me.
Sure.
Because that's where I made this big decision in life. And so the next year they did not have it because of COVID.
Right.
But the next year in 21, I was actually able to be on the stage. So
that's a big leap.
Yeah, so I went from being an audience member, not knowing anything or anyone, to actually being invited to talk on the stage.
Nice.
And so I returned there. Now, the funny story there, in 2021, the day I was on the stage at MIT, I walked out of the door at roughly the same time, got in my car, and I'm driving back to New Hampshire. And that is when my COO, John, let me know that all 13 of our STTR proposals were selected and 11 of them were funded. Okay. So MIT Space Conference has a very, very special place in my heart. And so this year, the big thing that happened at MIT this year was there's a gentleman named General Bucky Buto. Okay.
Yeah, General Buto.
Okay.
Just got here in Seattle about 3 weeks ago. Yep.
Yeah, I have always heard of Bucky. I've always been told I should talk to Bucky. Yeah. I've heard this man, myth, legend of Bucky, and every time I'm in the same building as him, I've never met him ever.
Okay.
So at MIT this year, I actually got to sit down with him face to face, one-on-one, pure happenstance, had no idea he was going to be there. And so I was able to actually have an audience with a unicorn of the space industry. At least for me. So that was my cool moment for this year. So nice. I'm holding out hope for some really cool stuff for next year.
Well, you know, if you're talking about conferences that are significant, do you know that Buto runs? He's part of three people that run the Space Industrial Base meeting that's happening in I don't know, 2 weeks down in Albuquerque.
No, I don't know about that one. I'll have to go track that. That sounds actually pretty interesting. We just actually so I was just in New York for the AWS space startup selection because we're part of that accelerator cohort for Amazon. There was about 130 some companies. We're one of the 13 or 14 that got selected. So we're really excited about that. And of course, last week we were at National Space Symposium, which is the big event of the year. By far my favorite event of the year outside of MIT. And it is just a week of just really intense networking and meetings. And there's so much that gets done at those at that conference.
Yeah.
So I'll have to look into the Albuquerque thing.
Yeah, so I just posted a link here. I would argue that it is the most important space conference of the year. I think it's actually more important than the symposium, right? Symposium is really great to talk about. You know, here's our big new thing. Here's our big new widget. Lots of announcements get made. It's terrific. It's a great place to shake hands and meet people you haven't met before. The State of the Space Industrial Base meeting is a very different kind of meeting. It's much smaller. It used to be invite only, but this year they're opening up. So I think that's terrific. I lovingly refer to it as it's the place where the sausage gets made. So nobody likes space policy. Nobody with a sane brain likes space policy. But you know, you referenced those SBIRs that you guys landed, that your team landed. To get to the SBIR, you have to have a program. To get to a program, you have to have, whether it's an executive order or a mandate from Congress. Usually, it's an executive order. To get to an executive order, there's papers that are presented and built. To get to those papers, there's a meeting. This is that meeting. So
Gotcha.
to go into this document, eventually become federal policy, and eventually become RFPs and RFQs, requests for proposals, requests for quotations, to the industry. And so this meeting is the starting point for what will become policy in 4 to 8 months. And it's 200 people, 150 people. So yeah, I would recommend you send somebody there. And by the way, General Buto is one of the core funders of it. He's there. He runs the Defense Innovation, the space sector of the Space Defense Innovation Unit. Colonel Felt used to run the Air Force Research Labs Space Systems Directorate. He's now been promoted. He's out at the Pentagon. I don't know who is running his section.
It's Colonel Jeromy Grimmett. He's Commander of Space Vehicle Directorate. You know Colonel Rayleigh very well.
Okay. All right. So AFRL, Defense Innovation Unit, and the Chief Scientist of U.S. Space Force are the 3 triumvirate co-hosts.
Oh, okay. So Dr. Moser.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, no doubt. Well,
yep, I do too. So this is kind of where the sausage gets made. I recommend it. Take a look at the site that I just posted. They have several of their reports. I'm cited in one. I'm pretty happy about that. That kind of makes me happy.
Very cool.
That's a professional hallmark. I'm pretty happy about getting cited by that document. Anyway, so yeah, MIT, great. This one's also interesting, not as famous, but I think It's definitely a heavyweight conference. So
Okay.
that's a recommendation. Take a look at. I might miss it. This might be the first time I miss it, actually. So I'm not even sure I'm going, but I'm hoping to go. I've got some conflicts. All right, so let's talk about Rogue. What does it mean to have orbital robots? What does it mean to, what are you doing? Your website talks about, you solve problems, you have solutions. To what?
Well, it's more, we work very hard on sustainability in space. So, whenever you look at everything that's been going on in space for the past 70 years, it's very clear to see the acceleration as access costs go down. The increase of mass being deployed into space is quite substantial. If you look at the end of 2021, we deployed more mass in just 2021 than all the previous 60 some years of space exploration combined. We did that in just 1 year. And they just tested Starship, which, blew up. But imagine when that son of a gun gets going. I mean, holy cow, imagine how much is going to get put up there and how quick that's going to accelerate. So to that end, we're really focused on building and deploying our orbital robots to, that uses goal-based autonomy to deal with problems that are out there. Everything from satellite repairs, maintenance, upgrades, refueling, and of course, debris removal. We have solved a number of these issues, or we're developing technology that solves a number of these issues. So we have some really great IP, and it's it takes a little bit of time, as you said in the show beginning. Space is hard, but we're really good at moving things along, and we've developed some really powerful solutions, and we're excited to get them into orbit and get them tested out.
So let's go into that. So a while ago, I kind of started using the phrase grand architecture, which kind of has 6 big parts to it. The first 2 we're really good at: launch and satellites. Right? We've gotten pretty good. And there's lots of different ways you can look at the metrics of that, but the world is pretty darn good at launch at this point. The anomalies are pretty rare. Usually the anomalies are works in progress, like systems that are being built. So, and other places in the world are starting to get really good at rocketry as well, right? So it's not just us. It's a global effort to get into space. But by and large, you can almost checkbox launch, right? It doesn't matter what you want to launch. There's probably some way you can get it into the sky if you've got it. The next thing is satellites, whether it's comms or Earth observation, whatever it is. We've gotten really, really good at that. And we have a more than 60-year heritage of all of this stuff, one kind or another, one flavor. So the next things on that roadmap, that grand architecture, are things like in-space maneuvering. I simplify and call them tugboats. Nobody in the industry wants to call them tugs, even though that's where their name those names came from, right? Space tugs. Apparently, that's kind of, I don't know, oversimplified, I guess. But in-space maneuverability.
That's right. That is one key aspect. That is one key thing. That's kind of the next evolution. Look, I look at this very similar to the way that we grew and expanded out into the American West. First thing that you did was you sent out your troops to secure the frontier. The next thing you did was you started sending your settlers in commerce, and that's thanks to the railroads, which are equivalent to the rockets. And the next thing you did was you started building telegraph lines like Starlink and OneWeb and in-space communications. And then that laid the foundation and groundwork for logistics, wagon trains, colony settlements, and miners and lumberjacks, fur traders. I mean, it's the same basic principle. We just happen to do it in that direction. It would just go up. Well, there is no space up in space, but you get the idea. So it's the same basic concept, it's the same basic principle. And it's funny because I went to a high school and they were having a career day, and they have a program that trains carpenters and plumbers and electricians. And they were like, well, I'm not sure that space needs, plumbers. I was like, we do in fact need electricians and plumbers, and we need all of these things. We need healthcare workers in space. We need all of these things in space because that's our next step. That's our next grand movement of the civilization, I would hope. So Rogue is here to try and further and enable, human capability in space through robotic systems and, making conduct and safer and more sustainable, providing ways of dealing with problems in space using our systems as opposed to sending a human outside to go and do something. Not only that, we got to help with the maintenance of the domain to continue having access to it. Used to, you would have hours and hours and days worth of timing that you'd be able to get up and to get your rocket up.
Not anymore.
You got about 15 minutes now. In some orbits, you got about 15 minutes. If you can't get that rocket up in 15 minutes, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are happening up there, and frankly, a lot of them we don't even truly understand. And Rogue is working very hard to help understand that and provide systems and tools to prevent problems and help make things better. Help drive the community and create a sustainable place up there in space for all of us.
Cool. We've got about 20 minutes left, a little less. Let's dig into Rogue, right? So our channel, our community, we're focused on the business, the commercialization of space, right? So for us, that's the finance, that's the policy, and that's the infrastructure, right? So how big is Rogue? It's not actually clear from your website, so I don't know how big y'all are.
Sure. So we're right around 25 people. We're actually about to go into a hiring sprint here in the coming weeks.
Cool.
Closing out thank you. We're closing out our fundraising round here in the next several weeks, next month or two, I guess. And we're going to be hitting this hiring sprint. So by the end of the year, we'll probably be somewhere around 50, 60 people, potentially. We have a lot of stuff that we're working on. Some things we can talk about, some things we can't.
Sure.
Most of it we can't.
A lot of stuff that we can't. I know we're all in the same industry. So you got selected for 11. You got funded for 11 SBIRs.
Now up to 14.
14, amazing. Is that 14 phase ones? Any phase twos in there?
14 phase ones. We've already submitted since the beginning of the year about a dozen proposals since the beginning of the year, and we have another 12 in the bullpen getting ready to get sent out between now and next week, I think.
Wow, that is a grant writing army you've got there, right? When you talk about 25 people, I was going to say that 23 and a half of them are writing grants right now.
They probably, yes, they are. Everybody is writing. Everybody and then some is doing writing. As a matter of fact, I just got a couple of messages saying, hey, we need you to go look at these sections. So as soon as I'm done here, I'll be going and looking at no one is immune from writing. Everyone writes. If you're a rogue, you're writing proposals.
Because that's revenue, right? I mean, that is the brutal, ugly reality that our industry doesn't have a lot of customers yet.
That's right.
It has one customer with a lot of flavors in the U.S. government, but at the end of the day, it's not company A is selling a widget to company B. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, this is, and it's even more difficult in our space because Rogue is a in-space services company. We're not a technology company. We're an in-space servicing company. So we just happen to develop technology that closes the gap that allows our spacecraft to deliver those services. That is not, we don't sell our tech. We might license it on some occasion, but we are a servicing company. If you go look at SpaceX, it's the same concept. They do not sell rockets. They sell launch services. They are a launch services company. And that's the same thing that Rogue is doing. We just happen to do all of our services in space. So what is very interesting is at Symposium this past week, we had more conversations with companies interested in doing orbital services of active satellites than ever before. We've never had this many conversations. Right. The conversation has never been nearly as serious. It was all very substantive conversation to the point of, okay, we want to look at what a contract would look like. We want to look at what, these costs would look like. We want to, start looking very seriously at doing these things. So what I would say is that there is a demand signal that is starting to rise and increase from the commercial sector, which frankly it's surprising. I will tell you, hands down, my expectation of the commercial market inflection point for in-space services was at least 5-7 years out. Right. However, if the conversations continue to accelerate and it becomes more and more acceptable and the demonstrations prove themselves out and so on and so forth, I could see where that could be accelerated tremendously. Nice. Which is great. And that means the government's not our only customer anymore. But boy, they are an amazing customer. Thank you, Uncle Sam.
Michael Mealing from Starbridge, he's regularly saying, who is your customer's customer, right?
That's right.
That's his phrase, right? So right now you've got, I'm going to make up a number, say you're $1.5 million, maybe 2 of government financing from, and that's important to note, that's non-dilutive capital, right? So those are contracts. Mm-hmm. That's real revenue. But it's ultimately the government is your client on that side.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So Rogue to date has received about $3 million in non-dilutive funding, okay. And we've raised about $2 million in private capital. Okay. We're in the process of raising $6.5 right now. Okay. It's not a big secret. We're raising $6.5 right now, and Yes, Michael Mealy is a gentleman that I speak to on the daily. So Michael has been a wonderful mentor and guide for us, and he's really been helping us figure these things out. And yes, he is a tremendous proponent of who is your customer's customer.
Right.
Like I said, the government is a phenomenal customer, but you have to have those commercial market signals. We're very fortunate that we have that. Now, where you start getting into a lot of problems is on the policy side. So you're right, you have the policy issues, or excuse me, you have the financial support, you got the policy issues, and I forgot what your third leg was.
Infrastructure, actually building hardware that needs
the actual infrastructure. So what's really great is the government can help you get a lot of demonstration and a lot of architecture built and a lot of stuff figured out, but it's going to take the commercial market traction to really pull that flywheel around, so that you have that continuous generation of revenue outside and beyond just the government. We're very fortunate that the U.S. Space Force is so aggressive and focused on getting capability out to space in order to make sure that we can maintain those satellites and national security assets and help build out the economic security and infrastructure that's necessary for companies like ours to exist within space and operate safely. Now, Rogue is extremely lucky that we have people like Chris Hearsey and Daniel Porras on our team that have been, working with National Space Council, working with CONFERS, working with the Commercial Space Flight Federation, working with the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs, the State Department, the DoD.
Right.
These people.
It's an alphabet soup problem to work in this industry, and if you don't have those relationships. So again, I'm going to point out to the Space Industrial Base meeting that I referenced, because it was at that meeting in 2020 where somebody from the National Intelligence Office said, buy what we can, build what we must, and that ethos has rippled across the entire industry. It's now locked in several of those documents. I think if you read those papers, you will be surprised at, if you look at the days when those papers were issued, you can imagine 6 months, 8 months before that paper was issued, the meetings happened, and then you can see policies start to happen. So the things that you're talking about, how good Space Force is at becoming a customer, it's because these meetings have been going on for a couple of years now. So the whole industry is moving that direction.
Yeah, it's really good. And their philosophy, especially with respect to Space Force, their philosophy is changing very quickly on the acquisition process. So it's no longer specify, design, engineer, bid out. They're really starting to move toward services. If you can offer it as a commercial service, it speeds that capability into their hands. So Rogue, being a services organization, we're very excited about that, and we have a lot of traction at the highest levels in Space Force, trying to offer up our services. And we hope to be able to talk more about that very soon. We're working through a lot of the various channels and commands within Space Force to get our stuff out there, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But it's been a real treat to work with personnel, and it's been a real treat to work with the requirements people and really understand their needs. And how we can fill those capability gaps, and how we can help fill these various issues that they have with aggression. We're really excited about what our systems can do in support of national security and training and everything else that we can lend to building out the in-space economy.
So with our last 5 minutes, I want you to kind of pull out your crystal ball, and I want kind of you to think about kind of two questions. Who is your client in 3 years? Who do you think you're going to be selling to, and who are they going to be selling to in just 3 years? You're hiring. You've got 25 people. You're adding in another 25 people. You're putting millions of dollars of capital into this. You're betting heavy. What is your bet on?
If I had to pull out a crystal ball right now, in 5 years, I think that it's really going to be about geocentric communications to start off with. I think that there is a growing demand, a need for communications such as Starlink, such as I want to say Project Kuiper, with Amazon, OneWeb. I think there's going to be a rapid increase in demand for that as those costs start coming down, and maintaining those constellations in terms of removing dead satellites out of constellations of thousands is going to be a real driving factor, because right now they're putting up 80 or 100 satellites at a time. And they self-insure. So if one or two die, they really don't care. It deorbits over time. But I think that, near Earth space, especially in that of LEO in the 700 kilometer range, that's going to start getting to be a bit of a premium on getting access into those slots, into those orbital regimes, especially in SSO. So I think that debris removal is going to be a pretty big thing in the next several years. I think trailing right behind that, refueling and repair of even small satellites is going to start really becoming a thing, because they don't want to lose their spot. If regulatory agencies really start throwing their weight around, and we've already seen increases in chatter from the government around that, which is good and bad. Things are going to start getting a little tight.
Let's stick on that. Let's stick to that point for just a few moments. So it's not about the CubeSat itself. You're not going to refuel a CubeSat because this thing is a precious cargo, precious element. You're going to refuel that so that they keep the red tape to a minimum between International Telecommunications Union, FCC, FAA, Department of Defense, Department of State, Department of Commerce. All of them.
Michael, listen. You want to know? Yeah. So let me give you something that's really. Let me give you a really messed up scenario. Okay. We have secured around $3 million in U.S. government funds to build and advance technology for U.S. Space Force and our nation. Okay, we take that job really seriously. Now, normally in a phase one, you go and do a feasibility study. You go find a customer, something like that. Okay, Rogue is not that way. In phase one, we have stuff going to space in phase one. We've already prototyped stuff in phase one. Okay? We don't mess around.
Right.
We take those dollars extremely serious. And that's why we've built the level of confidence that we have within Space Force to continue funding us and giving us more opportunity. Now, I say all that to turn around and say the technology that we're trying to send to space, guess where we got our spectrum? We didn't get our spectrum from the FCC. We had to go file in Germany.
Oh, no.
Okay?
Right.
We had to go and license our ground stations through Germany, through a partner, Leaf Space, in order to go and test out technology that the U.S. government paid us to develop.
Wow.
Okay, right? You want to know messed up, man?
Yeah.
That's a regulatory nightmare.
That
okay,
is crazy.
That's right. So right now we've got a U.S. flag spacecraft going to space very soon that is going to be using a spectrum license because we went to the NOAA. We got our imaging and everything from NOAA. That process went very smooth. But when it comes to the FCC and getting our spectrum, it was going to take us 6-9 months to get spectrum.
I was just going to ask, is it a backlog problem? Is it a staffing problem, or they don't?
I think there's so many changes. I think it's a multi-layered issue. It's not any one thing. It's a combination of things. And, now you got Department of Commerce starting to step in for traffic management. And you got the 18 Space Track Wing. And you're going to have to deal with that stuff. And then you got all the registrations. And it's a regulatory,
Yeah.
So it's really sad that we had to go to Germany, but guess what? The Germans got it done, man. I mean, we got our spectrum. Nice. We got what we needed. Okay. We got it in time. So until they can change their licensing or until they can improve the process, we're going to go to whatever country we got to so we can get the authorizations that we need and just keep moving.
Excellent. All righty, sir. Thank you so much for all of your time tonight. This has been actually very insightful. I really appreciate our community and our team. Really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm always happy to help and talk about Rogue and how we can support the community and, the rising tide lifts all. So we're really happy to just be part of it.
Right on. Welcome to the team. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right, y'all. Thanks very much. We'll see you again on Monday and Wednesday next week. We've got some pretty good guests coming in. I've got Jeff Kruken and Tom Olson joining us, and I said on Monday that we've got a big contract with the Space Frontier Foundation for their Pioneers series. Name TBD because that's just shorthand on our side. Thanks a lot. We'll see you on Monday. All right. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.